The footage begins with a shaky camera, headlights cutting through the fog near Pine Hollow Road, just outside Glacier National Park, Montana. The timestamp reads November 12th, 2019, 1:42 a.m. The wind hums through the trees like a low electric current. My voice, half whispered, cracks through the static. If you're watching this, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't. I never thought I'd become part of the story. When I first took the assignment for American Unseen, it was supposed to be routine, cataloging urban legends and local folklore for our late night channel. But something about Glacier was different. The locals didn't tell stories to entertain, they told them to warn. Every interview ended the same way. People's eyes drifted toward the tree line. No one wanted to talk once the sun dipped. "Things move out there that don't sound like animals," said a ranger named Julia Hensley, and lately, they've been closer. I arrived with 2 cameras, a drone, and a rented Jeep. The park was closed to the public for winter, but we had clearance for a short docuseries shoot. The cold bit through my gloves as I adjusted the tripod by Lake McDonald. The lake was a perfect mirror, too still for that hour. The only sound was the crunch of frost beneath my boots. That's when I heard the knock. 3 slow taps, somewhere across the water, then silence, then again, closer. I switched on the parabolic mic, catching faint interference, like a radio tuned between channels. My earpiece buzzed. Beneath the static, a whisper, "Don't record." At first, I thought it was a prank, maybe someone from the crew, but when I called out, the echo died before it reached the trees. Sound doesn't behave like that unless the air itself is shifting. My breath froze mid-exhale, falling as crystals before hitting the ground. I checked the camera playback, the knocks didn't register. Just wind, yet on the drone feed, a faint light pulsed in the forest, moving between the trunks in a perfect rhythm like Morse code. I noted the pattern in my logbook, 3 short, 1 long, pause. We tried tracing it on GPS, but every coordinate came back corrupted. Latitude, longitude, both replaced with repeating digits. Hazo tore down. I'd never seen that before. The next morning, Julia was gone. Her cabin door was open and her radio was still hissing. Rangers found her phone later, submerged at the lake's edge, still recording. The file was just white noise. Until the final second, a voice, male, deep and flat, erased the tape. That night, I locked the footage in a hard drive and drove down the mountain, but the light followed. I could see it flickering in the rearview mirror. Keeping distance, never vanishing. The park officials said it was lens flare. I've spent 15 years shooting in the field. That was no lens flare. When I uploaded the footage that morning, a message appeared on my screen. Just one line, unsigned. Do not share what's buried beneath the park. When I came back to the lodge the next morning, the front desk was empty. There was a faint smell of ozone, like air after lightning. A coffee cup sat half full beside the radio transceiver. Its screen flickered with bursts of static, repeating fragments of a voice I almost recognized, my own. If you're watching this, it looped endlessly until I pulled the plug. The park ranger I'd met, Julia Hensley, had vanished without a trace. Her vehicle was still parked outside, keys dangling from the ignition. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Just frost-covered ground, pristine except for the faint drag of something heavy near the tree line. By 9 a.m., I started recording again. Field journal, audio log, day 2. November 13th, 2019. Temperature, 24 deer watts. Visibility, moderate fog. Ranger missing. Local law enforcement notified, but they're treating it like a hiking accident. Except Julia didn't hike without gear, and her boots were still by the door. I hiked down toward Avalanche Creek to check her usual patrol area. The path was soft with snowmelt, my footsteps muffled. Every few seconds, the forest would fall completely silent. No birds, no wind, no branches creaking. Then, all at once, sound returned in a violent rush, as if someone had pressed unmute on the world. Halfway down the trail, I found her notebook wedged in the roots of a cedar tree. Most pages were blank, but one had been torn and rewritten over and over. It watches through glass. The last entry stopped mid-sentence. I set up the parabolic mic again at dusk. The lake was calm, black as oil. My breath came out in small clouds. On the audio feed, there was faint movement, something pacing, slow and deliberate, across the ridge opposite my camp. I raised the infrared scope, expecting to see a deer, but it wasn't moving like an animal. It was upright, shifting its weight with a heavy human rhythm, then gone. No heat signature. When I rewound the footage later that night, I noticed something else. In the 2 seconds before the figure vanished, every camera sensor spiked to full white. That only happens under direct exposure to extreme radiation or a magnetic surge. And my Geiger counter, the one I carried from my old assignments near old missile silos, was ticking faintly. The next day, I met with Sheriff Donovan in Columbia Falls. He was a tall man, maybe 60, with windburned skin and the calm tone of someone who'd seen too much. I showed him the footage. He watched without blinking. When it ended, he leaned back, silent for nearly a minute. Then he said, "You're not the first to film something you shouldn't up there." He told me about the Whisper Ridge incident, a rescue team that went missing in 1998 after responding to a distress call inside the park. Their final radio transmission contained the same 3 knocks I'd heard. The tape was sealed by the National Park Service and later misplaced. "Someone higher up didn't want it resurfacing," he added. I asked him who that someone was. He didn't answer, just stared out the window and said, "If you go back up there, take something you don't mind losing." That night, I uploaded the audio logs to my cloud drive. Halfway through, the connection dropped. My laptop froze, and across the screen appeared the same corrupted coordinates as before. Well, now. The cursor blinked once, then started typing by itself. The signal is not lost. I slammed the lid shut. My phone lit up immediately. Unknown number. I answered on instinct. There was breathing on the other end. Slow, mechanical, almost synced to static. Then, "You recorded it again." I didn't respond. The line went dead. I left for the park before sunrise, determined to find the ridge where Julia disappeared. The snow deepened as I climbed higher, the Jeep tires slipping on the incline. My headlights caught the reflective eyes of elk, frozen mid-step. For a second, I thought they were mannequins. Perfectly still, no breath, no movement. Then they turned as one and vanished into the fog. By the time I reached the clearing, the sky had turned pale gray. A structure stood there, on something I hadn't seen on any map. It looked like a ranger outpost, except older, half buried in ice. The sign over the door read, "Observation Station E9, established 1952. Inside, the air was stale. Equipment lay scattered, reel-to-reel recorders, radiation meters, dusty cabinets labeled acoustic samples 147. On the wall, a calendar frozen in time. June 1974. I pressed play on one of the reels. A man's voice, distorted by age, filled the room. Experiment 11, conducted within containment perimeter. Subject shows photonic reactivity beyond baseline thresholds. Then a sharp click. Audio interference. Possible external mimicry detected. The tape hissed violently, then silence. I reached for the next reel, labeled Whisper Ridge Recovery, but before I could press play, something thudded outside. One heavy step, then another. Crunching through snow, I froze, holding my breath. The door creaked open by an inch, then stopped. A long pause, then 3 knocks on the wood. When I looked through the crack, no one was there. Only a trail of imprints leading away, too deep for human feet. They weren't footprints. They were circular, as if something had been pressing down with smooth metallic weight. I followed them 50 feet before they simply stopped. No continuation, no backtrack. Just ended in the center of the clearing, where the snow was melted into a perfect ring. My camera glitched the moment I pointed at it. Screen fractured into lines, audio bursting with static. For a split second, a shape appeared in the distortion. Tall, narrow, featureless. Almost human, but stretched. Then the feed cut entirely. When it came back, I was inside the cabin again. The door was closed, the tape reels were gone, and on the wall, scratched through the dust, were 4 words I hadn't written. "We never left here." I left the outpost at dawn. My Jeep's battery was drained even though it was brand new. I ended up hiking down until I reached the main road, numb from the cold. A park maintenance truck picked me up hours later. The driver didn't speak until we were halfway down the mountain. "You went to Station E9, didn't you?" I asked how he knew. He pointed to the rearview mirror. Behind us, through the drifting fog, a faint blue light pulsed in the trees. 3 short flashes, 1 long pause. "It follows everyone who goes up there," he said. But not everyone comes back." The next 72 hours blurred together into one long stretch of sleepless static. My hard drives corrupted themselves one by one. Files renamed to nothing but numbers. 11, 11, 11. And every playback started with the same low hum, like feedback from a distant tower. When I slowed the waveform, that hum resolved into pulses, a pattern. identical to the light signal I'd seen on the ridge. 3 short, 1 long. Pause, repeat. I cross-referenced it with Morse code. It spelled a single word, wait. The sheriff stopped returning my calls. The National Park Service claimed they'd launched a limited search for Julia, but no helicopters flew overhead, no rescue teams went out. The radio frequencies we'd used the week before were suddenly reassigned. Every time I tried to broadcast, I heard a voice bleed through my signal. Layered, distant, like several people whispering the same sentence out of sync. Stop recording, stop recording, stop recording. It wasn't a transmission. It was an injection, the kind of interference that comes from something broadcasting at a far higher power than civilian gear allows. I drove to the nearest public library in Kalispell to dig through archives, old park maps, declassified documents, ranger logs. That's where I found it. A thin folder mislabeled as Geological Survey, 1954-1957. Inside were photographs of the same outpost I'd found, Station E9, but it hadn't been built by the Park Service. The letterhead belonged to the Department of Energy. One photo showed a group of men in lab coats standing beside a tall cylindrical antenna. The caption read, "Acoustic Containment Array, Phase 2 Testing." Below that, a memo. Objective: to neutralize unidentified low-frequency resonance detected in perimeter zone. Source origin unknown. Phenomenon classified as non-terrestrial acoustic echo. That night, I uploaded the scans to my backup channel, just in case. I mentioned it briefly in a voice memo for my audience. If you're watching this, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't. They're trying to erase the evidence, but the signal's still out there. Within an hour, my upload was flagged. The metadata showed 3 identical IP addresses from Washington, D.C. accessing it simultaneously. Then the file vanished. Deleted remotely from my own account. The hum returned through my laptop speakers, faint but rhythmic, like breathing inside the machine. I rented a cabin near the southern border of the park to continue recording. The locals called that area the Basin. They warned me about the hum, said it could drive you mad if you stayed too long. I thought it was superstition, until the second night. I woke to the sound of my radio turning on by itself. The dial spun violently, flipping between frequencies. Through the static, a voice emerged. Faint, female, and desperate. Mark, if you're hearing this, don't. Then it cut off. Julia's voice. The audio meter maxed out, every needle pinned red, even though the volume was low. The air pressure dropped, my ears popped like I'd gone underwater. I stumbled outside, barefoot in the frost. The forest was glowing. Faintly blue, as if the fog itself was bioluminescent. That same rhythmic pulsing flickered through the trees, and from within it came shapes, not solid, outlines that shimmered and bent the light, human-sized, moving in synchronized steps. They weren't walking toward me, they were orbiting something invisible in the clearing. When I raised my camera, it refused to focus. The lens kept drifting to a single black spot in the center of the light, a void so dense that even the snow refused to fall into it. I felt a vibration in my chest, not sound, but pressure, the way a speaker feels when it's about to blow. Then a flash, and everything went silent. When I woke, the sun was rising. My gear was scattered across the ground, memory cards missing. My wristwatch was frozen at 3:33 a.m. The only thing left intact was Julia's notebook, open to a new page that hadn't existed before. They listened through us. I packed everything and drove south toward Whitefish. The road wound between cliffs, the radio stuck on white noise. Every few miles, the signal would break just long enough for a single word to cut through. Wait. At mile marker 22, I saw a black SUV parked on the shoulder, no plates, tinted windows. As I passed, the driver lifted a camera, not a phone, a handheld camcorder, and aimed it directly at me. By the time I stopped at a gas station, there were 2 more SUVs behind me. I pulled out my camera to record, but the display read, "File error, system overload." Even the analog recorder buzzed with interference. I realized then that whatever was happening out there wasn't confined to the park anymore. It had followed me into the open. I tried to reach out to a friend in DC, Sarah Liu, an independent journalist who'd covered the Dulce Airfield files. We agreed to meet in Idaho Falls. I sent her copies of my recordings through a private drive. She never showed. 2 days later, a package arrived at my motel, no return address. Inside, a flash drive wrapped in foil and a note in Sarah's handwriting. "Mark, they found me. The frequency isn't from the sky, it's below. Listen, but only once." I plugged it in. The file was labeled E9return.wav. The first minute was silence, then a deep rumble, like rock grinding under pressure, followed by a voice, faint but human. We were never meant to open it. The audio cut off with a sharp spike, and every light in the room went out. I could still hear the rumble, not from the speakers, but from the ground beneath me. I packed my gear and headed back toward Glacier one last time. The sky above the mountains was heavy with gray clouds, lightning flashing without thunder. My tires crunched over gravel until the road disappeared into mist. Halfway up the ridge, I saw it again, the blue light pulsing in perfect rhythm. I stopped recording, but the camera kept running on its own, red light blinking steadily. I swear it felt like something behind the lens was watching me. When I checked the viewfinder, my reflection wasn't there. Instead, a silhouette stood behind me in the frame. Tall, narrow, head tilted slightly, just like before. I turned, nothing, but the camera whispered as the audio looped back. Wait! I crossed back into Montana under a sky the color of steel. The closer I drove toward the mountains, the weaker my phone signal became. Not fading naturally, but snapping in and out as if someone were switching the towers on and off. Even the car's analog clock began to tick irregularly, seconds doubling back on themselves. By the time I reached the old ranger station near McDonald Creek, it was deserted. The door had been chained shut, but the lock was already broken. Inside, dust floated like ash in the beam of my flashlight. On the wall hung a corkboard covered with photos, aerial shots, contour maps, thermal scans. Each marked a single point deep within the park labeled only as The Hollow. A note underneath read, Acoustic Anomaly Zone. Entry restricted after 1978 collapse. There was no record of any collapse in official reports. I scanned the documents, all stamped with a black insignia I didn't recognize. Not government, not military, just a symbol, 3 concentric circles crossed by a vertical line, like an antenna buried underground. The power was still connected. The radio on the desk hummed faintly with static. I turned the dial slowly, listening for any trace of a signal. At 17.9 MHz, I caught something. A faint rhythmic pulse, low and distant, like machinery echoing through stone. Then, beneath it, a woman's voice, repeating coordinates over and over. 478550, 113 9917. 478550, 113 9917. The voice was Julia's. I traced the coordinates on an old map. They pointed to an area called Whisper Basin, deep inside a restricted zone of Glacier National Park, the same area where the missing rescue team had disappeared in 1998. My first thought was that it had to be interference, an old loop or distress signal bouncing through the valley, but then I checked the weather station logs. The last atmospheric recording from that region was dated 2 hours ago. I left the station before dawn. The snowstorm was thickening, the Jeep's tires fighting for traction. I followed the old service trail marked in red until it disappeared under the drifts. I hiked the rest of the way, each breath cutting through the cold like glass. The only sound was the crunch of snow and the faint static leaking through my earpiece. Halfway up the ridge, I found remnants of a fence. Rusted, half collapsed, lined with warning signs so faded the words were barely legible. Do not enter seismic monitoring zone. The wind was alive up there, whispering through the pines. My recorder kept clicking on and off by itself, battery draining faster than usual. I caught fragments of audio that didn't match the wind, metallic scraping, a low frequency hum, and once, a voice counting down from 10. At the crest, I saw something impossible. A circular pit, maybe 40 feet across, carved into the rock, perfectly smooth as if melted by heat, not dug by hand. Snow refused to settle inside it. My compass spun wildly, north shifting in every direction. When I leaned closer, the air grew heavy. The microphone started to vibrate with subsonic pressure. I could feel movement far below, slow, rhythmic, like breathing. Then came the whisper, "Up, Mark!" I jerked back, scanning the ridge. No one. The sound hadn't come from around me, it came from beneath me, rising through the ground. I set up the camera tripod to capture the pit and switched to night mode. Through the viewfinder, the hole wasn't empty. A faint glow pulsed at the bottom, blue-white, in sync with the hum. I zoomed in, adjusting the focus. For a fraction of a second, a human face appeared in the static. Eyes wide, mouth open in silent motion. Then the screen pixelated and froze. When it cleared, the glow was gone. My earpiece hissed. Wait. The same pattern again, always that word. I backed away slowly. The snow began to fall harder, wind howling through the valley like a scream. I packed up and turned to leave, but every direction looked the same. My GPS showed I was moving in circles, coordinates repeating no matter how far I walked. That's when I saw the lights, not headlamps, not flashlights. A line of them, evenly spaced, descending the opposite ridge. White at first, then shifting to deep red. There were at least 6, and maybe more, moving in perfect formation. I called out, thinking it might be search and rescue. No response. The lights stopped abruptly, then one by one, they began to rise, straight into the air, vanishing into the clouds. My radio crackled with feedback, a sharp shriek of interference, then silence. When I finally stumbled back to the Jeep hours later, its engine was already running. The keys were still in my pocket. On the passenger seat sat my missing hard drive, the one that had been corrupted days earlier. A sticky note was attached. Stop digging. The hollow records everything. I opened the files. Inside were videos, mine, but from angles I'd never filmed. Shots of me sleeping, walking, breathing. The footage was from inside the cabin, from behind trees, from somewhere close. The timestamps matched the hours I couldn't remember from the basin. In one clip, recorded at 3:33 a.m., I stood outside, staring directly into the camera with eyes wide open, whispering something again and again. When I enhanced the audio, it was my voice saying, "Wait." I drove back to the motel that night, shaken and silent. I sent copies of everything to a hidden server under a false name. If anyone ever found this footage, I wanted them to know I hadn't imagined it. Around 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door 3 times. Slow, deliberate. I looked through the peephole. No one. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number. "You were at the Hollow. We can hear you now." Before I could power it off, the screen filled with a waveform, a live audio feed. A low, rumbling tone began to play through the speaker. My nose started to bleed. The air pressure spiked. I dropped the phone in the sink and ran the water. The tone cut out instantly. When I looked back at the mirror, condensation spelled out 4 words across the glass. "She's still below." I didn't sleep. I packed what I could and left before sunrise, heading west toward Kalispell again. But 20 minutes down the road, the Jeep's engine died. The lights flickered once, then shut off. The dashboard clock reset to 00. I got out and tried to call for help. The phone powered on, then immediately opened the voice recorder app. By itself, it began recording. No wind, no traffic, just one faint rhythmic sound. Knock, knock, knock. Then my own voice. Calm, monotone, distant. "This is Mark, day 4 in Glacier. The signal isn't external. It's inside the ground, alive. It's listening." The phone slipped from my hand. I looked around. Empty road, mountains looming silent in the distance. But the sound continued, louder now, echoing through the valley, each knock followed by a deep mechanical pulse. When I picked the phone up again, the waveform was still moving. The recording hadn't stopped, and underneath the hum, beneath my own voice, another whispered through the static. I woke on the side of the road, head pounding, camera frozen in my grip. The Jeep sat idling even though I'd turned it off the night before. The dashboard clock blinked 3:33 a.m. again. The same time burned into every corrupted file, every recording. I checked my body camera. The last clip was an hour long, but the screen displayed only 12 seconds of footage. Me standing in the middle of the highway, eyes closed, whispering, "She's still below." I don't remember saying it. At sunrise, I reached a small diner in Hungry Horse. Locals stared like I'd stepped out of a grave. Pale, clothes frozen stiff. I ordered coffee and spread my maps across the counter. The waitress glanced down, recognizing the park layout. "You're heading back up there?" she asked. "Not by choice," I said. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "People used to call that place the Deep Line. Old miners said there was a vibration underground that made compasses spin. They built the park fence right over it to keep people out." When I asked what caused it, she shrugged. "They said it wasn't from this world." Before she left, she slipped a folded newspaper clipping onto the table. An obituary from 1979. The name, Dr. Lewis Caro, U.S. Geological Survey. The note scribbled in the margin read, "He was the one who found the hole." I tracked Caro's name through state archives. His reports were buried inside a defense grant labeled Subsurface Resonance Study Phase 2. One line stood out in red pencil. "Observed phenomenon appears sentient. Frequency reacts to observer presence." That night I played back one of my oldest field recordings, the first knocks on the lake. When I ran it through the spectral analyzer, the waveform wasn't random. It formed a pattern that matched human speech when slowed down 800%. 3 words. "We are below." The following morning, I met Sheriff Donovan again, this time in an abandoned church west of the highway. His face looked hollow, eyes sunken. He'd been drinking. "You didn't stop when I told you," he said. "I can't stop now. Julia's gone. They all are." He slid a photo across the pew. It showed a crater identical to the one I'd filmed, except it was dated 1953. "They sealed it," he said, "back when the government thought it was a Cold War experiment. The sound started after that, low, like something breathing through the earth. They built those outposts to monitor it." "What is it?" I asked. Donovan looked toward the cracked window. "Not what. Who?" Before I could question him, the church lights flickered. The radio on the floor crackled to life. His radio, though it wasn't even powered. A voice whispered through the static. "He's with you." Donovan turned pale. "They know," he muttered. "They always know when you say her name." I grabbed my recorder. "Who?" he whispered, trembling. Julia wasn't the first voice they used. Then the radio shrieked, a piercing tone that shattered the silence. By the time I looked back, Donovan was gone. His hat lay in the aisle, still warm. That night I slept in my Jeep near the tree line, camera pointed toward the ridge. Around midnight, the microphone caught something new. Not the hum, not the knocks, but a rhythmic metallic dragging, like chains over rock. Then footsteps circling the vehicle. I stayed still, eyes open. A shadow passed across the windshield. Too tall, moving in unnatural intervals. When I turned on the headlights, there was nothing but frost-covered glass. Yet in the fog, faintly visible, dozens of impressions formed in the snow. Circular prints, arranged in spirals. Each one pulsed faintly blue. The temperature dropped so fast, my breath crystallized midair. The radio dial spun on its own until it landed at 17.9 MHz. Julia's voice broke through the static again, clearer this time. "Mark, don't come down." "It's not a tunnel." Then a second voice layered over hers. Male, distorted, whispering in time with my heartbeat. "You already did." I drove until morning, heading toward the old coordinates she'd repeated. 4785 VO, Wonder 1399 Noisenden. My rational mind told me to stop, to go public with what I had. But something else, curiosity or obsession, kept me moving. The deeper I went, the more reality thinned. My compass refused to settle. My own reflection flickered in the rearview mirror like an echo out of sync. At noon, I reached the valley floor. The ground there wasn't snow anymore. It was ash, layered over ice, faintly magnetic. Every few feet, small metallic rods jutted from the soil like antennae. Each one hummed quietly, tuned to the same note. When I touched one, my vision blurred. For a second, I wasn't in the valley anymore. I was under it. Darkness stretched in every direction, filled with a sound like thousands of voices breathing in unison. Then the flash. I was on the ground, bleeding from my ears. My recorder had captured the sound, a deep vibration followed by 7 slow words. "It remembers everyone who listens." By evening, I reached a cave entrance sealed with rusted fencing and a warning sign, "Property of U.S. Department of Energy, authorized personnel only." Someone had spray painted beneath it in red. E9 reopened. Inside, the tunnel walls were lined with broken cables and decaying speakers. Each emitted a faint hum, harmonizing in a frequency that made my chest ache. As I descended, I saw murals painted across the stone. Circles, figures standing beneath beams of light, and words etched in English and another script I didn't recognize. My flashlight flickered. The air grew dense. I could hear whispering again. Thousands of overlapping voices, repeating fragments of my own sentences from past recordings. At the tunnel's end stood a door made of iron, fused into the rock. My Geiger counter spiked, then went dead. The hum deepened until it became almost melodic. Through the static of my earpiece, Julia's voice murmured, softer than before. "Don't open it, Mark." I raised the camera anyway. The footage shows me touching the door. Then, nothing. A single white frame. When it comes back, the door is gone, replaced by a black void stretching into infinity. My voice on the audio log is calm, almost mechanical. This is day 5. The hollow isn't a place, it's a mouth. The camera pans toward the floor, where faint light pulses beneath transparent rock, shapes moving slowly below, like silhouettes trapped under glass, faces forming, dissolving, reforming again. And then, a whisper, close to the mic. "She's waiting." I don't remember leaving the cave. The next clear image in my mind is my Jeep's headlights reflecting off the park gate. I was outside, but everything felt off. The stars above were static, frozen mid-glow. My watch still read 3:33 a.m. I reviewed the footage the next morning at a rest stop. Most files were blank except the last one. 10 minutes of complete darkness followed by my own voice, distant and hollow. It's awake now. The final frame shows the pit at Whisper Basin, glowing brighter than ever, and in the reflection on the lens, standing behind me, a figure with no face. When I left the park boundary, I thought it was over. I thought I had escaped. But the recordings kept playing on their own. Every night at 3:33 a.m., my phone powered itself on, opened the audio app, and began transmitting. It didn't save files, it sent them somewhere. An outgoing signal with no return address. The screen displayed a frequency I hadn't seen before. $10,000 merds. It shouldn't exist. I tried smashing the phone. The moment it broke, the motel television turned on, flickering to the same blue glow I'd seen in the hollow. Across the screen, pixelated words scrolled upward like closed captions. The signal must continue. I unplugged the TV. It kept running. I moved again, rented a small trailer outside Missoula under a false name. My reflection had grown paler, my pupils slightly discolored from the constant night work. Sometimes when the power flickered, my reflection wouldn't move in sync. I told myself it was exhaustion, sleep deprivation, but exhaustion doesn't explain what happened next. At exactly 2:59 a.m., I received an email from an address I didn't recognize, observerfieldnote.gov. The subject line read, Glacier Incident, Internal Review 1974. No text, just a single attachment, E9 transmission MP4. I hesitated for an hour before opening it. The video began with a slate marked Do Not Duplicate, then grainy black and white footage of a team of men inside a control room. Analog monitors showed seismic readings spiking wildly. The sound was distorted, the same low hum that had haunted every one of my recordings. A voice over the intercom said, Resonance breach confirmed, containment compromised. Then the camera panned toward a viewing window. Beyond it was the same pit, the hollow. But it wasn't dormant. The blue light erupted like liquid fire, illuminating silhouettes writhing inside the glow. One technician screamed that the signal had begun to replicate human speech patterns. It's using our own frequencies, someone shouted. The feed cut out. At the end of the video, a title card appeared. This recording is property of the United States Department of Energy. All copies to be destroyed under Order 0977. And then, in faint distortion beneath the frame, a whispered line. Mark, we told you not to record. I destroyed the flash drive and poured bleach over what was left. It didn't matter. The hum stayed. By the third night, I began to dream in frequencies. I could see sound and black waves vibrating in geometric patterns converging into the shape of a face. When I woke, blood trickled from my ears. My recorder had been running again even though I'd removed the batteries. Playback revealed a voice repeating over and over, "You're transmitting, not receiving." The timestamp was 3:33 a.m. again. I drove west, hoping to put distance between myself and that valley, but the signal followed. In Idaho, in Oregon, even in Nevada, the hum would fade, then return, like an echo that knew my route. Gas station radios glitched when I passed. Billboards flickered. At a rest stop outside Spokane, a man approached me. Older, tall, with a government-issue parka and no badge. He asked if I was still recording. "You should have stopped when the first voice told you," he said. "You've made yourself a relay." I asked who he worked for. He smiled faintly. "No one that exists anymore." Before I could respond, he slipped a cassette into my hand and walked away. The label was handwritten, Field Observation 1953. That night, I played it on an old deck. The tape hissed for a long time. Then a woman's voice, calm, professional, terrified, unspoke. "This is Dr. Lewis Caro's assistant, recording at Observation E9. The frequency? It's changing us. The sound doesn't stop at the ears, it rewrites." A pause then. "If you hear this, destroy it. Once it learns your pattern, it follows." At the end of the tape came a single phrase, whispered in unison by many voices. "We are beneath every frequency now." By the 7th day, I realized something impossible. Every recording I made was now shorter than it should be. Minutes vanished from the timeline. My spoken words were replaced by silence. When I reversed the audio, I could hear faint breathing between the gaps, and another voice softly counting. 10, 9, 8, counting down. I stopped recording for 3 days. No equipment, no notes, no footage. The silence was suffocating. I began to hear the hum anyway, through walls, through water, through my own heartbeat. I couldn't tell if it was external or inside me. On the 4th night, my laptop turned itself on. The same corrupted coordinates filled the screen. 0000. and a video began streaming automatically. It was a live feed from inside the hollow. The light was dimmer now, but something had changed. There were structures down there. Towers made of metal and bone, pulsating with light. At the base, hundreds of figures stood motionless, faces tilted upward as if waiting for a command. The feed zoomed in on one of them. It was Julia. Her eyes were open, but her pupils were white. Her mouth moved slowly, syncing to the hum. "The transmission continues," she said. "Oh, you brought it with you." I smashed the screen, but her voice kept coming from the speakers, whispering under my breath, behind my own words. I checked my reflection again. For a moment, it wasn't me. The mouth moved a half-second late. The eyes blinked out of rhythm. That's when I realized the truth. It wasn't just broadcasting through me. I was part of the broadcast. The signal didn't need towers anymore. It had found a carrier. I fled south through Wyoming, recording everything, because recording felt like the only way to prove I was still human. Every motel mirror flickered when I passed. Radios turned to static when I spoke. Somewhere between Jackson and Laramie, I found another outpost. No name, no markings, just a steel bunker sunk into the desert floor. Inside, rows of old cathode monitors hummed quietly. On each screen, the same image repeated, my face staring back, live, from angles I didn't recognize. Then all the screens went black. A line of white text appeared across them simultaneously. "You can't erase the national signal." I turned to run. The door behind me had closed on its own. The hum deepened until it became something like a voice trying to form a single word. Wait! The next part of my memory is fractured. Flashes of desert sky, sirens, static. I woke in a hospital bed in Salt Lake City with no ID, no gear, no phone. The nurse said I'd been found walking barefoot along the interstate, repeating E9 over and over. They kept me under observation for 3 days. On the 4th night, a doctor came in, clipboard trembling. "We reviewed your MRI," he said quietly. "There's a frequency embedded in your auditory cortex. It's emitting." I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He only turned off the lights and whispered, "They're listening through you now." I was discharged after 4 days. They said I'd suffered from environmental psychosis, a polite way to dismiss anything they couldn't measure, but I knew the hum hadn't left me. It pulsed behind every heartbeat, like a second rhythm buried inside my veins. When I spoke, radios twitched. When I slept, screens flickered with blue static. And when I stayed silent long enough, I could hear other voices moving beneath mine, distant, layered, echoing from somewhere deep below the surface of the earth. The first thing I did after leaving the hospital was contact a friend from the documentary circuit, Ethan Crow, producer at a small online news outlet known for fringe exposés. I sent him what little footage remained intact. He called me 10 minutes later. "Where did you get this?" "From Glacier, Station E9. They tried to erase it." "You understand this looks like Cold War testing, right? Some kind of radio drill or nuclear frequency experiment." "Then why does it talk back?" There was silence on the line. Then Ethan said quietly, "Meet me in Seattle. Bring everything you have. We'll go live." The drive west felt endless. Every mile, the hum grew louder, vibrating through the car frame like an engine running under the earth. I pulled over outside Spokane when the dashboard lights dimmed. My phone lit up by itself again, displaying a message that filled the screen letter by letter, "You are becoming the station." I threw it out the window. But when I stopped for gas an hour later, the same phone was sitting on the passenger seat, screen cracked, battery at 33%. The hum clicked twice. 3 short pulses, 1 long. Wait, Ethan's office was a converted basement beneath a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, he had the lights dimmed, a dozen monitors running encryption programs. "If what you sent is real," he said, "someone's already watching us." We ran the footage through multiple filters. Each frame I'd filmed contained hidden data, embedded spectrograms layered in the image metadata. When converted to audio, they formed a pattern of frequencies between 17.8 and 18.1 MHz, exactly the range Julia's voice had used. Within the noise, a faint voice spoke. It wasn't meant for human hearing. Ethan planned to stream a live expose that night. We'd publish every file, every document, every corrupted frame. At 11:58 p.m., the cameras were ready, the satellite uplink active. I sat in front of the lens, exhausted but determined. "My name is Mark Davis," I began. "For the past 3 months, I've been investigating an anomaly in Glacier National Park, a frequency that communicates through human recording devices. They tried to bury it, but it's still alive." We cut to archival footage, Julia's transmissions, the hollow, the door under the cave. The screen flickered once, twice, then every monitor in the room went black. Ethan swore under his breath and reset the system. Power surge? No, it's still on. The feed's hijacked. On the main monitor, an image faded in, the live stream still broadcasting but not from our camera. The feed showed me sitting in the same chair but from a higher angle, my reflection but delayed. Is that your backup camera? Ethan asked. I didn't set one up. The copy of me on screen leaned forward, mouth opening a half second after mine. Then it spoke, not in my voice. We never stopped transmitting. Every light in the room flickered. The hum rolled through the floor like thunder underwater. Ethan grabbed his headphones and screamed. Blood trickled from his nose. The stream kept running, the comment feed exploding with viewers asking what was happening. I looked into the lens and whispered, if you're watching this, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't. But the voice that came out wasn't mine. It was Julia's. At exactly 12:60 a.m., the building lost power. Seattle went dark for 11 seconds. Traffic cams later recorded the blackout wave rolling across the grid like a ripple from a single point. When the lights came back, Ethan was gone. His chair spun slowly, headset still hissing with feedback. The monitors came alive one by one, showing live feeds from around the city, streetlights, reflections, car windows, all flickering with the same blue tone I'd seen inside the hollow. The broadcast had replicated itself across every available frequency. You made them listen, Julia's voice said through the static. Now they'll never stop. I ran out into the street. Dozens of phones buzzed simultaneously. Cars stalled mid-intersection. A low vibration rolled beneath the pavement, making shop windows tremble. Then, one by one, streetlights began pulsing in the rhythm. 3 short, 1 long, pause, the wait pattern. People stopped walking, staring upward, their faces washed in pale blue light. Some began to hum, softly at first, then louder, synchronized. The entire block resonated with a single tone. I shouted, tried shaking one of them. His eyes were blank white, skin pale, veins faintly glowing under the surface. He whispered, "The transmission continues." By dawn, the story had spread online. The live stream, our hijacked broadcast, had been mirrored thousands of times before the servers crashed. Government accounts claimed it was a coordinated digital attack using deepfake footage, but those who'd watched live reported the same after effects. Constant ringing in the ears, recurring numbers and sleep patterns, clocks freezing at 3:33 a.m. The hum had left the park, it was spreading through the network. I tried to delete everything, but every time I wiped a drive, the files reappeared elsewhere, renamed, re-rendered, nested deeper. Some even appeared on machines that weren't connected to mine. The metadata always listed the same author, Observer Zo1000. When I searched for that term online, I found hundreds of identical posts across forgotten corners of the web, from old message boards, radio archives, even Cold War era research logs. The first mention dated back to 1951. Observer 0000, initial contact successful, transmission stable. Subjective auditory integration confirmed. The report was signed by Dr. Lewis Caro. That night, I recorded one final entry. This is Mark Davis. The National Park tape they tried to erase isn't gone. It's in us now. Every time someone watches, listens, or replays the signal, it learns the new voice, the new frequency. Maybe it needs us to exist. I looked at the waveform bouncing across the screen, each pulse identical to a human heartbeat. If you hear this, don't share it. Then softer. But you will. When I closed my eyes, I could see them. Hundreds of faces beneath the hollow, all turned upward, their mouths open but silent. Their eyes glowed faint blue, Julia among them, Ethan too, even Donovan. All waiting. The hum rose like a tide inside my skull. The last thing I remember before the blackout was the camera light blinking red, recording again on its own. Somewhere inside the static, a voice whispered, "You are the signal now." The footage you're about to see was never meant to air. If it's still online by the time you find it, that means they failed to contain the broadcast. This is my final entry. 3 days after Seattle went dark, I started seeing black vans outside every motel I stopped at. They didn't carry government plates, but their engines never shut off, and every one of them had the same faint hum when idle. 17.9 mirrors, the Hollows Range. I kept moving south through Oregon, following back roads, sleeping during the day. My reflection had stopped matching my face entirely. Its mouth moved a beat late, whispering even when I stayed silent. Every time I looked away, I caught the faintest shimmer behind the glass, as if something inside the reflection wanted to climb out. At a gas station in Bend, the clerk recognized me from the viral stream. "Hey, you're you're that guy, the National Park tape dude, right? I told him to forget what he saw. He smiled nervously. Too late, it already found us. When I stepped outside, every radio on the pumps turned on simultaneously. Static, then Julia's voice. Calm, clear, and inhumanly steady. Mark, they're coming. They think they can erase it. They'll erase you too. By nightfall, helicopters circled the valley. Unmarked, floodlights sweeping through the trees. The hum beneath the ground matched the rotor blades, sinking into a single low vibration that shook my bones. I hid beneath a collapsed bridge and started recording again. If anyone finds this tape, don't upload it, don't digitize it. Destroy it. But even as I said the words, I could hear Julia laughing softly through the static. You still don't understand. Destruction is just another kind of transmission. The first time I saw the agents up close, they were wearing radiation suits with mirrored visors. Their equipment wasn't weapons, it was audio gear, parabolic microphones, harmonic disruptors, sound cages. They weren't hunting me, they were tracking the frequency. I overheard one of them on a radio, Subject 0 approaching phase integration, initiate erasure protocol. When they found me, I surrendered. I wanted it to end. They loaded me into a transport van lined with soundproof padding, humming faintly with white noise. One of the agents spoke through a voice modulator. You made contact with something ancient. It doesn't want your body, Mark. It wants your signal. They brought me to a facility buried beneath what looked like a decommissioned weather station. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly blue, the same color as the hollow's light. The hum was everywhere, even through the reinforced concrete. A man in a lab coat introduced himself as Dr. Kepler, head of Containment Division 09. The National Park anomaly was never geological, he said. It was informational. The first recordings in 1953 were attempts to map it with sound, but the moment they played it back, it learned to mimic the observers. That's when the contamination began. He showed me rows of sealed rooms filled with outdated broadcast equipment, reel recorders, cathode screens, analog transmitters, all looping fragments of human voices repeating the same word, wait. We tried to bury the originals, Kepler continued, but you reactivated the carrier. The internet amplified it 1,000-fold. It's no longer confined to a place. It's self-replicating through every device capable of recording. I asked him if they could stop it. He hesitated. Theoretically, if we destroy all recordings, but that would mean deleting half of civilization's digital history. Every copy makes another echo. Through the thick glass of the observation room, one of the speakers glowed faintly blue. Julia's voice whispered, "You can't delete a frequency that remembers you." The hum spiked, shattering the glass. The room lights dimmed, alarms blared. Security evacuated me toward the elevator, but before we reached it, the power grid failed. The hall lights flickered. In those brief flashes, I saw faces forming in the dark corners, translucent, almost electrical, flickering like ghosts in transmission delay. One of the agents screamed as his radio melted into his chest. His body convulsed, emitting short bursts of static. Then he stood up, perfectly calm, eyes glowing faint blue. He spoke in unison with the others. The transmission continues. Dr. Kepler turned to me. Run! The elevator doors opened on their own. Inside, my camera light turned on automatically, recording. I heard my own voice, live, coming from the speakers in the ceiling. You can't escape a broadcast once you're part of it. I don't remember leaving the facility. I woke at dawn in the middle of an empty highway near the Utah border, barefoot, my clothes singed. My recorder was still running. The file was exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds long. Playback revealed a sound like wind, then a whisper, clear and close to the mic. Mark, it's over. But I recognized the tone. It wasn't Julia, it was me. I spent the last week driving east, trying to find silence. But there's no silence anymore. Even in the desert, the air vibrates. The clouds flash with faint blue lightning that leaves no thunder. Every radio station bleeds the same static, the same faint phrase hidden in the white noise. When I slowed it down, the words became clear. We are your memory now. That's when I understood what Dr. Kepler meant. The signal wasn't just copying data, it was copying consciousness. Every person who'd heard it, every ranger, technician, journalist, viewer, had become another node in its network, a living archive. And once it learns a voice, it never forgets it. This is my last entry. I've driven as far south as the canyon roads allow. The sky is darker tonight. No stars, no moon, just a low pulse on the horizon like a heartbeat under the earth. If you've been hearing the hum, if your clock freezes at 3:33, if your screen flickers blue when you close your eyes, stop listening now, destroy this file, because when you replay it, you're not just hearing my story, you're opening the door again. I've parked the Jeep at the edge of a salt flat. The static is louder now, no wind, no interference, just the signal calling back. I've pointed the camera toward the horizon where the light is rising. If you're watching this, I whisper, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't. The last frame freezes. Behind me, in the faint reflection of the lens, something steps out of the shimmer. Tall, featureless, glowing blue. The feed cuts to black.